Hello everyone. We are going to tackle multiplying and dividing fractions. This is a little bit easier than adding and subtracting because first of all we do not need to get a common denominator. So we don't need to mess with that. And also what we have to remember though, the one thing we do have to do is if we have mixed numbers, we have to actually change them to improper fractions before we can multiply. And to multiply, all we have to do, so I'm going to write this one down, is we multiply across the top, we multiply across the bottom, and then we reduce. So there's a 2 in both of these, and we get 2/5. One thing we can do is we can do some of this reducing earlier. So if we look at this 1/2 times this 4/5, and I want you to notice we reduce when for the numerator and denominator. So if we look at our numerators and our denominators and we can see some reducing ahead of time, we can do that. So like this 4 and this 2, I can divide both of those by 2. So I'm dividing the 4 by 2, dividing the 2 by 2. So the 2 divided by 2 turned into a 1, the 4 divided by 2 turned into a 2. And then multiplying across the top, multiplying across the bottom, we get to that same result. It does not matter where you do your reducing. However, if you reduce ahead of time, the numbers will stay smaller. Here they get a little larger. One thing to note is you cannot do this. No, cannot do this when you're adding and subtracting. Adding and subtracting, common denominators, add numerators or subtract numerators because it's counting. Here we are changing the size of these pieces. Okay? All right, so, and if you think about this, we want half of the 4/5. So half of 4/5, it makes sense, 2/5. Half of 4 is 2. All right, so let's do some practice here. I'll just kind of jump around here. So my 3.5 and multiplying by 1 1/7. To multiply mixed numbers, we need to turn them into improper fractions. So 3 times a 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 1 times 7 is 7, plus 1 is 8. Okay, I can reduce ahead of time. So 7 divided by 7 is 1, 7 and 7 is 1. This is 1, this is 4, dividing each by 2. Multiplying across the top, multiplying across the bottom, I get 4/1, which is just 4. If I had not seen the reducing to begin with, multiplying across the top, 8 times 7 is 56. Multiplying across the bottom is 14. You may not have seen that there was a 7 in both, but you would have seen that they were even, so we can divide that 2 out. This gives me 28 over the 7. And now hopefully you realize this is improper, so we would go to actually change it to a mixed number, or realizing that there's a 7 in both. Either case, you would eventually get that 4. Okay. We can multiply 3 numbers together, so I'm going to multiply this one. I feel multiplying is a lot easier than adding and subtracting, so I'm not going to do as many examples here. So the 5 1/3, I'm going to change that to improper. So 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. Times my 7/8. 1 times 7 is 7, plus 2 is 9. Okay, this one it would probably be to our advantage if we can do some reducing ahead of time, because if I multiply across the top 16 times 7 times 9, that is a very large number. So if we can do reducing ahead of time, it keeps the numbers smaller. So looking in the numerators, looking in the denominators, I notice there's 7s in both. So 7 divided by 7 is 1. 7 divided by 7 is 1. Just remember what you do to a top, you have to do to a bottom, and this only works with multiplying. My 3 and my 9, they do not have to be right next to each other. So I'm dividing both pieces by 3. The 8 and the 16, I'm dividing both by 8 actually. Okay. And if you can, if this had been reduced and this was a number down here that could reduce with one of those, you can keep reducing with tops and bottoms. So multiplying across the top, multiplying across the bottom, we just get plain old 6. All right. That is multiplying. But along with multiplying comes division. Dividing is not that much more difficult, but we do have to introduce a topic called the reciprocal. Okay, the reciprocal of a fraction is basically the switching of the numerator with the denominator. So the reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3. Now the reciprocal of 6 1/2, we first have to write that 6 1/2 as a mixed number. So 6 times 2 is 12, plus 1 is 13. So the reciprocal is going to be that number flipped upside down, 2/13. Okay, we cannot take the reciprocal of a mixed number unless it's in its improper form. So that's why we need to kind of remember this. So to divide one fraction by another, what we're going to do is we aren't going to divide. We are going to take that piece and we're going to change it to a multiplication, and we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 6 is 1/6, because this is like 6/1. So I'm going to rewrite this as 18/1. And now we would get that 18/6, and reducing this, we get 3/1, which is 3. Yes, I realize that 18 divided by 6 you could do in your head to get 3, but I wanted to show you how we can take a division problem and write it as a multiplication problem by multiplying by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So let's do this 3/4 divided by 7/8. To do 3/4 divided by 7/8, we are not going to divide, but we are going to multiply the 3/4 and multiply by the reciprocal, which means we're going to flip this one, by 8/7. And now I can do some reducing ahead of time. The 4 with the 8, 1 and 2, so I'm dividing both by 4. Now multiplying across the top gives me 6. Multiplying across the bottom gives me 7. So 6/7. Let's do a couple more. Let's do some of these word problems. A square plate is shown is 17.5 inches wide. We want to know how many 2 1/4 strips can be cut from it, or how many. So we're going to basically take this piece and chop it up into, or divide it into, 2 1/4 strips. So 17.5 divided by 2 1/4. Okay, to do this, mixed numbers, we need to change them to improper fractions first. So 17 times 2, 34, plus 1, 35. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. Okay, one thing to do when you are doing mathematics, it is nice to write every little step out. Students tend to want to jump and get to the answer. But mathematics, it's all about these little baby steps and keeping things written neat and concisely. So here we have a division. So I need to divide. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of the second one. Okay, so now I'm going to do some reducing. And now I don't think 35 and 9. No. So then multiplying across the top, 35 times 2 is 70. And 1 times 9 is 9. This is a improper fraction. So 9 goes into 70 7 times. 9 times 7 is 63. So 7 left over. So 7 and 7/9. All right, let's do one more. Let's do this bottom one because that's going to require the most work. 1 2/3 divided by 2 3/5. First thing I'm going to do is change them to an improper fraction. So 1 times 3 is 3 plus 2 is 5/3 divided by 2 times 5 is 10 plus 3 is 13/5. Okay, so first thing, this is just one step, changing them to improper. Now to divide, we multiply by the reciprocal. Some students would be putting steps together, so don't do that. Do any reducing that we can do. I do not see any. So multiply across the top, 25. Multiply across the bottom, maybe do a little bit of long multiplication here, 39. I get 25 over 39. Hopefully with practice you will get a lot better at this. Again, let me know if you need more. Talk to you in the next video.